Trapped aboard a Space Hulk, 5 Space Marine heroes find themselves hunted by the Tyranid Prime and its Xenos swarms. These mighty warriors must work together to fight their way through the derelict vessel and defeat the monstrous Tyranid Prime once and for all. Hello there, and welcome to this painting guide. In this video, I'll be showing you how to quickly and easily paint all 5 of your Space Marine heroes so they'll be ready for gaming in no time. All the paints we'll be using are on screen now. We've handily divided these up individually for each Space Marine hero. Sergeant Maximus, Brother Lucas, Brother Adrix, Brother Vaughn, and Brother Raphael. There's quite a bit of crossover though, so we'll be using a lot of the same paint across all our individual Space Marine heroes. Here's also a list of all the brushes and extra equipment that we've used. Building them is super simple, and we can use the guide that comes in the box to help us out. There's no need for any glue, simply line up the correct pieces and carefully push them together. You should have these built in no time at all, and then we can crack on with painting. Sergeant Maximus of the Ultramarines is an excellent tactician and leader. We'll be painting him first and taking you through every step of the way. Don't worry if you've never even picked up a paintbrush before, it's super easy and straightforward as well. The first thing we'll be doing is something called an undercoat, and we'll be using our pot of Macragge Blue to do this. Don't worry if you haven't heard of undercoating before, it's really simple. Before we start painting, a miniature needs something called an undercoat. This is where we apply paint to the whole model, and then this acts as the foundation for all the other paints to stick to. There are 2 ways to do this, using a spray can or by using paint from the pot. In this case, we're going to use paint from the pot. It's normal for the paint to settle and separate in the pot over time, so give it a good shake until it's a smooth, even colour. While you're doing this, be sure to hold your finger or thumb over the lid to prevent it from opening accidentally. Then push the lid until it clicks into the tab at the back to help keep the pot open while in use. Wet your brush with a little water, wipe any excess away on a paper towel so it's damp but not sodden, and then load the bristles with paint from the reservoir inside the lid. Take care not to get paint all the way up the metal at the end of the brush, which is called the ferrule, as this can damage the brush as it dries. Just about halfway up the bristles is fine. Put the paint onto your palette to control how much is on your brush, and then we can start applying it to our model. You'll see that this miniature is packed full of detail. If we apply one thick coat of paint, we risk clogging up all that awesome detail. This is why it's important to mix your paint with a small amount of water. By applying a couple of thin layers instead of one thick one, we ensure we get to see all that detail and get a smooth finish too. You can be really messy at this stage. Just make sure you get the Macragge Blue into every little nook and cranny and flat surface. You'll notice that the first coat might seem to struggle to stick to the plastic. Don't worry, just keep going and cover as much as you can. Once the first coat is dry, apply a second coat in the exact same way. You'll find the coverage of the paint is much better this time around, and when that's dry, apply a third coat if you think you need it. The end result should look something like this, with the entire model covered evenly in blue. Well done, you've just undercoated your first model, and now Sergeant Maximus is well on his way to being painted. Once the blue is completely dry, we can move on to the black. For these areas, we'll be using Abaddon Black. We'll be using this to pick out the gun casing and the weapon strap as well. When applying this, thin it down with a little water just like we did before. It'll probably take 2 thin coats to achieve a complete coverage. Painting in all the main colours of the miniature like this is called base coating. We do want to try and be as neat as we can here, as this will give us a much better end result and will save time not having to go back and tidy up. However, if you do get any black onto the wrong areas, just take your Macragge Blue and go back over the mistake a few times. Don't forget to thin it down with water again though. The more layers of paint that go onto a model, the more we risk creating lumps and bumps. Thin layers are a super easy way to get that smooth finish we want. Up next is Mephiston Red. We'll be using this to pick out the extra details on the head and the Purity Seal wax as well. As you can see, some of the areas we need to paint are very close to the other colours, so try to be as neat as you can. But if you do make any mistakes, it'll be super fast to tidy up with the previous colours. If you ever find your brush losing its points, just roll it on the palette while slowly dragging it back to get those bristles behaving again. After a few layers of Mephiston Red, we can move on. Now onto Leadbelcher for some extra details on the weapon and some mechanical areas on the head. Remember to thin your paint down and apply it in 2 thin layers. Once that's dry, we can use Retributor Armour to paint the shoulder pad trim, chest eagle, and extra details on the belt, and the bullet shells across the model as well. Some of these details are quite small, so just take your time, be as neat as you can, and remember that we can always fix any mistakes we make later. Up next is Catachan Flesh for the skin, the Purity Seal cloth, and any other accessories that you want to pick out. Then all that's left to paint is the base with Mechanicus Standard Grey, and we've finished base coating. Your first Space Marine hero is nearly complete. There's just one more super fun step that will make him look awesome and ready for the gaming table. The next thing we're going to do is apply Agrax Earthshade to the entire miniature. This paint is different to the others because it's a shade paint. Shade paints are very thin and are designed to slightly tint flat surfaces of the miniature while settling into the recesses. You'll notice how this creates depth on the miniature by darkening down those recessed areas. Applying a shade is a quick and easy way to really take your paint job up a notch. We won't need to add any water to this paint. Just take it straight from the pot, making sure there isn't too much on your brush. Agrax Earthshade works over so many different base coats, so we can apply it over the whole model, even the base. When you're doing this, work in small sections. We want to avoid the paint drying too quickly anywhere, as this could leave marks on the flat surfaces and create an inconsistent finish. Now, shade paints do take quite a while to dry, especially when they're applied all over a model like this. 30 minutes or so should do the trick. Sergeant Maximus in all his glory. Wow, he looks awesome. Congratulations, your first Space Marine hero is fully complete and ready for the gaming table. We can just quickly neaten up the base with 2 thin layers of Abaddon Black. Now let's work on getting all his battle brothers painted too. Let's just quickly change our paint water and we can get moving. I'd recommend doing this after finishing each of your Space Marine heroes. Brother Adrix of the Salamanders wields his bolt rifle with amazing skill. We'll be painting him next in the exact same way as our last model. We're just going to switch up the paints. Starting with the undercoat, we'll be using Warpstone Glow to achieve that awesome green colour. Remember to apply this in several thin layers and let each layer dry completely before applying the next one. This is quite a thin paint, so you may need to apply more layers of this than the Macragge Blue on the previous model, but that's absolutely fine. And there we are, our undercoat is down and now we can start base coating. First up is all the black areas using Abaddon Black. You can pick out as little or as many areas with this as you want to, but I'm going to be painting the shoulder pads, backpack, gun casing, pouches and hair. 2 thin layers as normal should do the trick, just be as careful as you can to avoid getting any of this onto that green armour. But remember, if you do make any mistakes, we can simply go back and tidy them up. Looks great! Now onto Leadbelcher for all the silver areas. So on this model, this is just some extra details on the bolter, but feel free to add more silver areas to your model if you want to. Remember to apply your paint in 2 thin layers. We'll continue doing this going forward. But don't worry, I'll let you know if that changes. Up next is Retributor armor for the chest eagle and any bullet shells across the model, some of which are quite tricky to get to, so just be as careful as you can. If you're struggling, it can actually help to paint towards yourself. This lets us be a little neater. Fantastic! Just a few more paints left to go and we're done. Mephiston red for the Purity Seal wax, Corax white for the cloth underneath. You might need more thin layers than normal here. And then we'll finish up by painting the face and the base with Mechanicus Standard Grey. Try to be as careful as you can around all the other colours. To tie everything together and add some definition, we'll once again conclude our paint job with a shade paint. Apply Agrax Earthshade all over the model and its base. Remember to work on one section at a time for more control. Looks awesome! Brother Adrix of the Salamanders is now battle ready and can stand alongside Sergeant Maximus. Up next is Lucas. Brother Lucas of the Space Wolves carries a bolt rifle and grenades into battle. He's an awesome model and I hope you're as excited as I am to paint him. For the undercoat, we'll be using Rust Grey. This is a pretty thin paint, so you may need an extra layer or two. Just make sure each layer has dried fully before adding another one. With that done, we can move on. Onto Abaddon Black now for the weapon casing, pouches, hair and one of the shoulder pads too. If you're feeling extra fancy, you could try and paint the awesome Space Wolf squad markings, but you don't need to if you're in a rush to get your models onto the gaming table ASAP. After that, we're on to Retributor armor for the trim, chest eagle and the bullet shells too. Stick to thin layers and be as careful as you can not to make any mistakes. Obviously we can always go back and clean them up, but it'll take some time, so we want to avoid it where we can. Then it's Leadbelcher for the silver parts on the bolt gun once again, but also this awesome robot hand. Feel free to pick out any extra areas if you're keen to do so. Up next is Mephiston red for the other shoulder pad, Purity Seal wax and the smoke grenade too. If you're ever unsure on where certain colours go, just check out the box art for help. But there's not really a right or wrong answer. Then it's Bugman's Glow for the skin and Purity Seal cloth. It's especially important that we apply this paint in thin layers, as we don't want to build up any texturing on the model's face. Just a couple paints left to go. We'll finish up in the same way as before. Mechanicus Standard Grey for the base, Don't forget about that smoke cloud too. And then once it's all dry, we can apply Agrax Earthshade over the entire model. Done! Our third Space Marine hero, Brother Lucas, is complete and ready to join the rest of his painted battle brothers. Just 2 more left to go. Brother Vaughn is a tac-turn Iron Hands warrior, equipped with a powerful heavy bolter. This guy might be my favourite in the bunch. Let's jump right into painting him. For the undercoat, we'll be using Abaddon Black. This is a real nice paint and is a great undercoat colour. Then onto Corax White for the heavy bolter and Purity Seal. You might need more than 2 thin layers of this, but that's completely fine. Just make sure that each layer is completely dry before you apply any more. After that, we can use Leadbelcher to paint the trim, chest eagle, bolter details, face accessories, and the hands too. Now this is quite a lot of areas, so just take your time and work through them carefully. Then we can paint the face with Catachan Flesh, the bullet casings with Retributor armor, and finally the base with Mechanica Standard Grey. That concludes our base coats, and now we can apply an all-over shade of Nuln Oil. You could use Agrax Earthshade instead if that's all you have, but Nuln Oil will work a little nicer over these colours. Blammo! Another one of our Space Marine heroes finished, just 1 more to go. Brother Raphael is a noble blood angel who wields a roaring chainsword. The last but certainly not least of all our Space Marine heroes. Let's speed through painting him. First up is Mephiston Red for the undercoat. Then onto Abaddon Black for the weapons, pouches and hair. After that we can use Leadbelcher for all the extra details on the weapons. And then Retributor armor for the trim, chest eagle, bullet casings and any extra details that we want to pick out. Bugman's Glow for the skin, Mechanica Standard Grey for the base, and we'll finish up with an all-over shade of Agrax Earthshade. And there we are! Now your Space Marine heroes are more than ready to fight their way through the Space Hulk and finish the Tyranid Prime once and for all. Hopefully you found this video useful and had fun painting your Space Marine heroes. For more tutorials, tips and tricks, you can check out some of the other videos on the Warhammer YouTube channel, or you can head to your local Warhammer store where amazing staff are always happy to help. Thanks for watching, see you next time. Bye bye!